All right, coming into camp, these are the things that we saw we needed to work on. The game of football is about balance, leverage, mobility, and power. And in order to have those things, you need your feet up and under you, right, to do anything. Your average football stance is a little wider than the shoulders, all right? Good solid base. For snapping, we probably need 4, 6, and in extreme cases of long limbs, and you're a growing guy, you might need it, maybe 8 inches maximum wider than your regular stance. The reason for that is we need room between the legs to make an uninhibited throw down and through towards our target. Okay, we don't want to encounter any resistance. Now, coming in, I think you were a bit too wide, and too wide can create some problems. Number one, the wider you get, the harder it is to sit down in the stance, which means your center of gravity gets higher and higher. Not a winning formula for football. Number two, when you do sit down into the stance, the wider you get, you generally start creating pressure in the hip flexors. Tenses you up, tightens you up, slows down the motion because you have to fight through that tension to accelerate the football. Okay. Third thing is, it does get harder to balance up and down field around that center of gravity. The fourth thing is, the wider you get, the less advantaged you are after the snap. Your mobility is compromised when you're out like this and guys are running past you. Okay. And then the fifth thing is, it's really the quickest path to a short career is to finish with locked out knees, because somebody could fall and just take you out. Okay. So we need to basically take your feet, get them up under you a little better, and then my other suggestion was to rotate the heels inward. What that does is points the toes outward slightly and the knees, so that when you sit down in the stance, you can push those knees out over the toes and create maximum space without having your feet too wide. Okay, you coming in had real wide feet, but your knees were kind of collapsing in, which means you weren't really benefiting by having extra space there. Bring them under you, rotate the heels, sit, push out. You'll maximize your space without being too wide. The other important thing is that position gives us a solid base on the feet, allows us to channel the leg drive into the hips effectively, and it puts the load bearing of your body weight on the quads, which is the most comfortable and explosive position from which to begin. Okay? Let's set you up and look at your stance width now and see how it's looking. Now face the camera for me. Yeah, sorry, I didn't say it. Okay? Now, does that feel comfortable? Yeah. The important thing is we're generally looking to see the knees a little wider than the shoulders, indicating we have plenty of operating room. No pressure in the hip flexors, load bearing on the quads. Go ahead and stand up, step back to where you were. All right. The other things we had, number one, you were overextended downfield. What I mean by that is you had the ball way too far out in front of you. What that tends to do is a couple of things. Number one is it pulls too much weight forward in your stance. If we're off balance, it's very difficult to accelerate the ball back in the other direction. The snapping stance, adapting a regular football stance, means we have to become balance neutral. Weight on the balls of the feet, heels touching the ground. It's almost like just a two-point breakdown position, just like this. Okay, then we simply bend over at the waist so that we can throw the ball through our legs. All right, so being overextended, that's the first thing. It creates tension, it pulls too much weight forward. It also gave you a steep slope, and what I mean by that is your rear relative to your shoulders was a lot higher. Okay, and what that means, a steep slope, we talked about the fact that energy travels down the spine, up through the legs into the hips. The ideal is that those energies converge in an arrow point. Wherever that arrow is directed is pretty much where the ball's going to fly. So a steep slope is predisposing you to snap the ball high. Obviously not what we're shooting for. So we need to flatten that out. The last thing I wanted to mention is you were overstretched downfield and you were compensating by shoving your weight back into the hips, okay? Net effect, leaving you overstretched on the field and flat-footed, okay? How tall are you? 6 foot. You're setting up like you're 6'2", kind of like we just said about Ryan. So what we essentially need to do, because if you're flat-footed, it's kind of like doing a hack squat. The only way your leg drive can go is straight up. That's vertical, which is, you know, it might be good leg drive, but it's not going to contribute to the snap. In order to do that, it's got to be back in the hips so it can meet and converge with the upper body motion energy, okay? The other problem is straight up, as the motion energy travels down the upper body, down the spine, you're going to T-bone it. So you're killing your power in two ways. Number one, you're not capturing lower body energy. Number two, you're T-boning the upper body energy, motion energy, all right? So what we essentially need to do, pretty easy fix, we need to take this whole head to tail platform, and by unbending the knees a little bit, raise you a little higher up, shorten you down. By moving you vertically further from the ball, you'll be able to bring the ball slightly closer while still preserving a good arm extension, okay? Once we get that point, all we really needed to do was shift weight around your center of gravity until we can position the knees directly over the toes, which is our standard for saying you're optimally balanced. Weight on the balls of the feet and balance neutral. Any questions about all that? Okay. The final thing we had, if you remember, you were starting out wide, you were snapping, you were kind of, those legs were coming out from under you horribly. Okay. So what we did is we grabbed some cones, and let me grab those real quickly, okay? Again, if you're splaying your legs out, you're sending the energies to the sidelines, not towards your target into the hips, number one. And number two, you're not having your feet under you at the end, which means you have no capability of doing anything after the snap. All right. So what we did is we hobbled you. We put a channel using cones around your heels and tried to ensure that any leg drive you generated was into the hips and towards your target. Okay. Go ahead and set up. We're going to three-step you a couple of times. I can tell you that when you drive those legs in the right direction, your snaps have become just incredibly good. Okay. You ready? Mm-hmm. I pull you forward. Gets knee bend to 90 degrees or less, straightens the back, fully extends the arms. Then I raise you up, maximizing operating room under your torso. Last thing I do is I push you back into the hips towards your target till the heels touch the ground, knees are over the toes, you're solid on your feet. Now if you feel that I've shortened you too much, go ahead and put the ball out. Just be sure it doesn't shift your weight. Okay, give it a throw. Excellent. Now the habit, putting your hands down, is because you're used to falling over. We want to get you so stable you can hold the finish, train for muscle memory, and also be in a base breakdown position after the snap so that you can do whatever you need to do, block, cover, whatever it is. Okay. I think we got you a little too narrow this morning. Maybe because you're fatigued. As you fatigue, it's a disciplined thing to set up right. The most important things as you fatigue is to be very disciplined in setup. We said that's 85% of being great because everything falls together. And number two, use your breathing to keep the body relaxed. Number three, try to be quick and smooth with the motion as opposed to trying to kill it, in which case you'll tense up the muscles, the physics will go wrong, and you'll have trouble. Okay? Let's do it one more time. Three-step. 1, 2, 3. Push against my hand slightly. Okay, now relax. I'm just getting you positioned just right. Feel comfortable? Yep. Good, quick, two-handed, aggressive throw. Fingertip pressure. How'd that feel? Yep. That was a beautiful snap. The ball went exactly where you wanted it to because the arrow was pointed straight there at the waist of the punter. All right. Now let's talk about how you can make those adjustments without me being here to manipulate you. Let me see that ball, Ryan. Go ahead and set up. Okay, so coming in, you were overextended downfield, you were steep in slope, and you were flat-footed trying to counterbalance. You were overstretched. We elevated your platform a little and shortened you down. Then we simply settled you into the stance and got the knees right over the toes. Is that comfortable? Yep. Make sure you got fingertip grip and accelerate and control the ball with two hands, driving through the cones, channeling the leg drive into the hips and towards your target. Excellent. Much more stable on the feet. You feel pretty good about that? Any questions? Okay. All right. Here we go, Michael. Okay, raising that front end, shifting the weight back, knees over toes, get you solid on your feet. Good two-handed throw. Give it a good explosive throw. Keep those feet under you. Okay, keep it rolling. Remember, the one thing, I brought these cones for a purpose. Channeling leg drive back into the hips towards your target. Do not splay those legs out and let them come out from under you. Aggressive crunch will help you drive that weight back into the hips and towards your target. Aggressive gut crunch and throw. See the difference? Excellent. Okay. All right, raise the front, shift the knees back over the toes to get balanced. Okay, drive into the hips towards your target. Gut crunch and throw. That's the key. Don't forget the gut crunch and throw.